down in the forest, where the warm sun and the fresh air made a sweet resting place, grew a pretty little fir tree. And yet it was not happy. It wished so much to be tall like its companions, the pines and the firs which grew around it.
The sun shone and the soft air fluttered its leaves, and the little peasant children passed by, prattling merrily, but the fir tree heeded them not. Sometimes the children would bring a large basket of raspberries or strawberries, wreathed on a straw, and seat themselves near the fir tree and say,
"Is it not a pretty little tree?"
which made it feel even more unhappy than before. And yet all this while the tree grew a notch or joint taller every year, for by the number of joints in the stem of a fir tree, we can discover its age.
Still, as it grew, it complained.
"Oh, I wish I were as tall as all the other trees. Then I would spread out my branches on every side, and my top would look over the wide world. I should have the birds building their nest on my boughs, and when the wind blew, I should bow with stately dignity like my tall companions."
The tree was so discontented that it took no pleasure in the warm sunshine, the birds, or the rosy clouds that floated over it morning and evening. Sometimes, in winter, when the snow lay white and glittering on the ground, a hare would come springing along and jump right over the little tree, and then how mortified it would feel.
2 winters passed, and when the third arrived, the tree had grown so tall that the hare was obliged to run around it. Yet it remained unsatisfied and would exclaim,
"Oh, if I could keep growing tall and old, there's nothing else worth caring for in the world."
In the autumn, as usual, the woodcutters came down and cut down several of the tallest trees, and the young fir, which was not grown to its full height, shuddered as the noble trees fell to the earth with a crash. After the branches were lopped off, the trunks looked so slender and bare that they could scarcely be recognized. Then they were placed upon wagons and drawn out by horses out of the forest.
"Where are they going? What would become of them?"
The young fir tree wished very much to know. So, in the spring, when the swallows and storks came, it asked,
"Do you know where those trees were taken? Did you meet them?"
the swallows knew nothing, but the stork, after a little reflection, nodded his head and said,
"Yes, I think I do. I met several new ships when I flew from Egypt, and they had 5 masts that smelled like fir. I think these must have been the trees. I assure you they were stately, very stately."
"Oh, I wish I were tall enough to go on the sea."
said the fir tree,
"What is the sea and what does it look like?"
"It would take too much time to explain."
said the stork, flying quickly away.
Rejoice in thy youth,
Said the sunbeam,
rejoice in thy fresh growth, and the young life that is in thee.
and the wind kissed the tree, and the dew watered it with tears, but the fir tree regarded them not.
Christmas time drew near, and many young trees were cut down, some even smaller and younger than the fir tree, who enjoyed neither rest nor peace with longing to leave its forest home. These young trees, which were chosen for their beauty, kept their branches and were also laid on wagons and drawn out by horses out of the forest.
"Where are they going?"
Asked the fir tree.
"They are not taller than I am, indeed. One is much less, and why are the branches not cut off? Where are they going?"
We know,
Sang the sparrows.
we have looked in at the windows of the houses in town, and we know
"What is done with them?"
they are dressed up in the most splendid manner, and we have seen them
"Standing in the middle of a warm room."
and adorned with all sorts of beautiful things, honey cakes, gilded apples, playthings, and many hundred of wax tapers.
"And then?"
Asked the fir tree, trembling through all its branches.
"And then what happens?"
We did not see any more.
But this was enough for us. "I wonder whether anything so brilliant will ever happen to me."
Thought the fir tree.
"It would be much better than crossing the sea. I long for it almost with pain. Oh, when will Christmas be here? I am now as tall and well grown as those which were taken away last year. Oh, that I were now hid on a wagon or standing in the warm room, with all the brightness and splendor around me. Something better and more beautiful is to come, or the trees would not be so decked out. Yes, what follows will be grander and more splendid. What can it be? I'm weary with longing. I scarcely know how I feel."
Rejoice with us,
Said the air in the sunlight.
enjoy thine own bright life with the fresh air. But the tree would not rejoice, though it grew taller every day, and winter and summer its dark green foliage might be seen in the forest, while passers-by would say,
What a beautiful tree!
a short time before Christmas, the discontented fir tree was the first to fall. As the axe cut through the stem and divided the pith, the tree fell with a groan to the earth. Conscious of pain and faintness, and forgetting all its anticipations of happiness, in sorrow at leaving its home in the forest. It knew that it should never see its dear old companions, the trees, nor the little bushes, and many colored flowers that were grown not even the birds. Neither was the journey at all pleasant. The tree first recovered itself while being unpacked in the courtyard of a house with several other trees, and it heard a man say,
"We only want one, and this one is the prettiest."
Then came two servants in a grand livery, and carried the fir tree into a large and beautiful apartment. On the walls hung pictures, and near the great stove stood a great china vases with lions on the lids. There were rocking chairs, silken sofas, large tables covered with pictures, books, and playthings worth a great deal of money. At least the children said so. How the fir tree trembled.
What is going to happen to him now?
Some young ladies came, and the servants helped them to adorn the tree. On one branch they hung little bags cut out of colored paper, and each bag was filled with sweetmeats. From other branches hung gilded apples and walnuts, as if they had grown there. And above, all around, were hundreds of red, blue, and white tapers, which were fastened on the branches. Dolls, exactly like real babies, were placed under the green leaves. The tree had never seen such beautiful things before. And at the very top was fastened a glittering star made of tinsel. Oh, it was very beautiful.
This evening, how bright it will be.
Oh, that the evening will come and the tapers lighted, then I shall know what else is going to happen. Will the trees of the forest come to see me? I wonder if the sparrows will peep in at the windows as they fly. Shall I go faster here and keep on all these ornaments, summer and winter?
But guessing was of very little use. It made his bark ache, and this pain is as bad for a slender fir tree as headache is for us. At last the tapers were lighted, and then what a glistening blaze of light the tree presented. It trembled so with joy in all its branches that one of the candles fell among the green leaves and burned some of them.
"Help! Help!" exclaimed the ladies, but there was no danger, for they quickly extinguished the fire. After this, the tree tried to not tremble at all, though the fire had frightened him. He was so anxious not to hurt any of the beautiful ornaments, even though their brilliancy dazzled them. And now the folding doors were thrown open, and a troop of children rushed in as they intended to upset the tree. They were followed more silently by their elders. For a moment, the little ones stood silent with astonishment, and then they shouted for joy till the room rang, and they danced merrily around the tree while one present after another was taken from it.
What are they doing? What will happen next?
At last, the candles burnt down to the branches and were put out. The children received permission to plunder the tree. Oh, how they rushed upon it till the branches cracked, and it had not been fastened glistening star to the ceiling, it must have been thrown down. The children then danced about with their pretty toys, and no one noticed the tree, except the children's maid, who came and peeked among the branches to see if the hour of the day had been forgotten.
A story! A story!
Cried the children, putting a little fat man towards the tree.
Now, we shall be in the green shade, and the tree will have the pleasure of also hearing. But I shall relate only one story. What shall it be?
Humpty Dumpty!
The fir tree remained quiet still and thought to himself.
Shall I have anything to do with this?
But he had already amused them as much as they wished. Then the old man told them the story of Humpty Dumpty, while he fell down the stairs and was raised up again and married a princess. And the children clapped their hands and cried,
Tell another! Tell another!
For they, after this, the fir tree became quiet and silent and thoughtful. Never had the birds of the forest told such tales as Humpty Dumpty, who fell down the stairs and married a princess.
Ah, yes. So it happens in the world.
Thought the fir tree. He believed it all because it was related by such a nice man.
Well, who knows? Perhaps I may fall down too and marry a princess.
He looked forward joyfully to the next evening, expected to be again decked with lights and playthings and gold and fruit.
Tomorrow I will not tremble. I will enjoy all my splendor, and I shall hear the story of Humpty Dumpty again.
And the tree remained quiet and thoughtful all night. In the morning, the servants and the housemaid came in.
Now,
Thought the fir,
all my splendor is going to begin again.
but they dragged him out of the room and up the stairs to the garret, and threw him on the floor in a dark corner where no daylight shone, and there they left him.
What does this mean? What am I to do here? I can hear nothing in a place like this.
And he had time enough to think. For days and nights passed, and no one came near him. And when at last somebody did come, it was was only to put away large boxes in a corner. So the tree was completely hidden from sight, as if it had never existed.
It is winter now. The ground is hard and covered with snow so that people cannot plant me. I shall be sheltered here, I dare say, until spring comes. How thoughtful and kind everybody is to me. Still, I wish this place were not so dark, as well as lonely, with not even a little hare to look at. How pleasant it was out in the forest while the snow lay on the ground, and the hare would run by. Yes, and jump over me too, although I did not like it then. It is terribly lonely here.
Squeak, squeak.
Said a little mouse, moving cautiously towards the tree. Then came another, and they both sniffed at the fir tree and crept between the branches.
Oh, it is very cold, or else we should be so comfortable here, shouldn't we, you old fir tree?
I am not old. There are many who are older than I.
Where do you come from, and what do you know?
Asked the mice, who were full of curiosity.
Have you seen the most beautiful places in the world, and can you tell us all about them? And have you been in the storeroom where the cheeses lie on the shelf, and hams hung from the ceilings? One can run about the tallow candles here, and go in thin and come out fat.
I know nothing of that place, but I know the wood where the sun shines and the birds sing.
And then the tree told the little mice all about its youth. They had never heard such an account in their lives. After they had listened to it attentively, they said,
What number of things have you seen? You must have been very happy.
Happy.
exclaimed the fir tree, as he reflected upon what he had been telling them. He said,
Ah, yes. After all those days were happy days.
Then he went on and related about the Christmas Eve, and how he had been dressed up with cakes and lights, and the mice said,
Oh, happy you must have been, you old fir tree.
I'm not old at all. I only came from the forest this winter. I'm now checked in my grove.
What splendid stories you can relate.
And the next night, 4 other mice came with them to hear what the tree had to tell.
The more he talked, the more he remembered, and then he thought to himself,
Those were happy days. But they may come again. Humpty Dumpty fell down the stairs, and yet he married the princess. Perhaps I may marry a princess too.
and the fir tree thought of the pretty little birch tree that grew in the forest, which was to him a real beautiful princess.
Who was Humpty Dumpty?
Asked the little mice, and then the tree related the whole story. He could remember every single word, and the little mice were so delighted with it that they were ready to jump to the top of the tree. The next night, a great many more mice made their appearance, and on Sunday, 2 rats came with them. But they said it was not a pretty story at all, and the little mice were very sorry, for it made them also think less of it.
Do you only know one story?
Asked the rats.
Only one. I heard it on the happiest evening of my life, but I did not know I was so happy at the time.
We think it is a very miserable story. Don't you know any story about bacon or tallow in the storeroom?
No.
Many thanks to you then, replied the rats, and they marched off. The little mice also kept away after this, and the tree sighed and said,
It was very pleasant when the merry little mice sat around me and listened while I talked. Now that is all past too. However, I shall consider myself happy when someone comes to take me out of this place. Would this ever happen?
Yes. One morning, people came to clear out the garret. The boxes were placed away, and the tree was pulled out of the corner and thrown roughly on the garret floor. Then the servant dragged it out upon the staircase where the daylight shone.
Now life is beginning again.
Said the tree, rejoicing in the sunshine and fresh air. Then it was carried downstairs and taken into the courtyard so quickly that it forgot to think of itself. It could only look about. There was so much to be seen. The court was close to the garden, where everything looked blooming. Fresh and fragrant roses hung over the paling. The linden tree were in blossom, while the swallows flew here and there crying.
Twit, 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 my mate is coming.
But it was not the fir tree they meant,
Now I shall live.
cried the tree joyfully, spreading out its branches, but alas, they were all withered and yellow. And it lay in a corner amongst weeds and nettles. The star of golden paper still stuck to the top of the tree and glittered in the sunshine. In the same courtyard, too, the merry children were playing, who had danced around the tree at Christmas and had been so happy. The youngest saw the gilded star and ran and pulled it off the tree.
Look what is sticking to this old, ugly fir tree.
Said the child, treading on the branches till they cracked under his boots. And the tree saw all the fresh, bright flowers in the garden, and then looked at itself and wished it had remained in the dark corner of the garret. It thought of its fresh youth in the forest, of the merry Christmas evening, and of the little mice who had listened to the story of Humpty Dumpty.
Past, past. Oh, had I but enjoyed myself while I could have done so, but now it's too late.
Then a lad came and chopped the tree into small pieces, till a large bundle lay in a heap on the ground. The pieces were placed in a fire under the copper, and they quickly blazed up brightly, while the tree sighed so deeply that each sigh was like a pistol shot.
Then the children who were at play came and seated themselves in front of the fire and looked at it and cried, "Pop, pop." But at each pop, which was a deep sigh, the tree was thinking of a summer day in the forest, and of Christmas evening, and of Humpty Dumpty, the only story it had ever knew how to relate, till it was at last consumed. The boys still played in the garden, and the youngest wore the golden star on his breast, with which the tree had been adorned during the happiest evening of its existence. Now all was past. The tree's life was past, and the story also, for all stories must come